This podcast is produced by The Brand is Female.
Hi, I'm Cardzy B, and this is my podcast, Hex in the City. You may know me from my signature tarot deck and former podcast, Badass Bitches Tarot, and you may know my story as well. I picked up my first tarot deck at age 11, but let that go for a career in fashion in New York City. After going through a series of pretty traumatic losses a few years ago, I came back to my cards, and this time things took a more serious turn. I'm back with a weekly show, and I'm excited to bring the stars down to earth every week to provide you with an update on what's happening in the world, cosmically speaking. Welcome back and happy Cancer season. I hope everyone had a powerful full moon in Capricorn this past Thursday. So we've been moving through a series of pretty intense transits and cosmic activity for over a month now. We talked a lot about eclipse season in June, the summer solstice at the end of the month, and then Mercury stationed to go direct, although it's still technically in shadow until July 7th. Mercury is now direct, and then this past Thursday, we had the full moon in Capricorn, all leading us into Cancer season with a powerful new perspective in a lot of ways. The full moon really highlighted for many of us areas that we probably put energy and effort into since at least Capricorn season, which began, if we look back, at the end of December 2020. So if throughout the past 6 months you've had, I know that I have had any feelings of stagnation, frustration, or impatience of why is this not working out already? Why isn't this moving faster? Or why isn't this moving at all? This full moon that occurred last Thursday is likely to show where these efforts will begin to pay off. So I mentioned last week how, for me, this had to do with, in the biggest part, my geographic location, and how in Capricorn season of 2020, I, really wasn't ready to make a move, but I also knew for certain that Pennsylvania wasn't my long-term home. And the past 6 months really drug on for me as I felt in a state of limbo, and often that languishing kind of Groundhog's Day feeling of, I know this isn't aligned, but I also don't know where I'm headed. And if you too have been experiencing that, whether in a relationship, home situation, or career, the Capricorn full moon in Cancer season promises so much needed inertia in those areas. Capricorn is known as kind of like the workhorse, the hardest working sign of the zodiac, but can also be guilty of forcing situations or kind of manipulating situations to work in the way that it feels best. And in the tarot, for that reason, Capricorn rules the Devil card. And the Devil card is known as, self-sabotage, by tying ourselves to behaviors, people, or situations that limit our growth and highest potential. This full moon probably provided powerful opportunities for most of us to break through any of those remaining devil energies between what we've been working towards and our ability to truly receive what's in our highest interest. So looking at July's cards, we have, to begin with, the Cancer-ruled Chariot card, because we always look at the astrological rulings for the cards. Some months have both their planetary ruler as a card and the constellation astrological card. And July is one of those months, so we're working with the Cancer-ruled Chariot and the Moon-ruled High Priestess, in addition to our pull from the January 2021 overview. So starting with the Cancer-ruled Chariot, this is really about what motivates us, what drives us, what's bigger than us. Because when we look at this card, and one of the reasons this has always fascinated me, is it's the only card that is named for an object rather than the main character or entity of the card. Because we have this guy driving the chariot, and it's not called the charioteer or the driver, it's called the chariot. And it's because it's not really about the warrior dude that's inside the chariot, but more about the momentum of the chariot itself. When we look at the OG Smith Rider-Waite card, the driver isn't even holding on to the reins, which is one of the most interesting pieces, I think, of that card. It's kind of showing that he's not manipulating or forcing it in kind of that, technical Capricorn linear way. He's being driven by something bigger, and he's kind of using that intrinsic force and working with the universe and channeling and being in flow state to move. And in the deck I created in the Badass Bitches Tarot, I drew this card as Miley on a wrecking ball for that reason, because it was kind of like the momentum of the wrecking ball. And we see that, we think wrecking ball, we don't think Miley Cyrus. And I think that that's very much kind of the modern day essence of the chariot and the charioteer. So for those of us who felt that feeling of being in limbo or not quite certain how or where to proceed over the first half of 2021 since Capricorn season, Cancer season in the Chariot is likely to bring in a momentum that feels like that Chariot, that wrecking ball energy. It's something bigger than us, something that really motivates us from within a bigger purpose. And because of that nurturer kind of energy of Cancer, we always think of Cancer as a lot of divine feminine energy, like the mother, the nurturer. And because of that ruling of the Chariot and the fact that we are in fact in Cancer season, this motivation is often involving our families, our community. How are we helping the collective to evolve? So it's kind of the reason that it has such that big Chariot, that wrecking ball effect, is because it's something bigger than us driving us in the Chariot. For me personally, a few projects that I've wanted to move forward with, but just wasn't feeling the inspiration to do so over the past couple of months for a multitude of factors, really have started to come in a big way. I had considered creating a tarot course for a while now, but I just didn't feel the call in a big way to do so, to kind of give energy to it and all of the other things I've been working on. And recently, several clients, listeners, social media followers, and mystics have reached out to me about wanting to take tarot and intuitive development courses. And, do I have that? It's something they follow me on social or follow the podcast for. And so I am now offering one-on-one hour sessions that will be becoming a bigger full course in the future as well. But right now I do have one-on-one hour sessions in learning the tarot, kind of custom to where you're currently at. But this all came through, this inquiry and inspiration came through at the very beginning of Cancer season, which was an undeniable Chariot moment of kind of like, this is bigger than me. This is going to help other people. It's filling a true need for people that are wanting to expand, wanting to get deeper into their own intuition for healing. And I was like, all right, okay, gotta move forward with this. It's not something that's about me. It's bigger than that. In the OG deck, much like the High Priestess, the Chariot also sits between light and dark. And in this case, there's one black and one white Sphinx with the Chariot card, with the Smith Rider-Waite card. And the key message here I always saw is kind of that neither one of them is pulling the Chariot. And it's not like it's being pulled more towards the dark Sphinx, more towards the light, but rather all working together in flow to carry the Chariot forward straight down the middle. And that kind of represents the integration that we talked about in June in the work of the Lovers energy, that, the illumination of the solar eclipse and the solstice last month with the Gemini ruled lovers to help us discern and decide what is in our highest alignment. And the Chariot really brings momentum to kind of take action on those decisions. So once it's been brought to light, that kind of, okay, we see the light, we see the shadow, we're able to discern that path down the middle that's right in our truth and our inner knowing. This works well with our other card for Cancer season. Again, I'm sure the Order of the Golden Dawn, who assigned the original astrological and planetary rulings, designed it this way, but I'm like, oh, these work well together. So the High Priestess, which is associated with the moon is the ruler of Cancer. So these two work really nicely together. And the High Priestess is often the favorite card of readers, channelers, and psychics because it's the card of intuition, of inner knowing and accessing kind of behind the veil. And this is also the card of integration and duality. And in the OG Smith Rider-Waite deck, the High Priestess, much like the Chariot, sits between a white pillar and a dark pillar in front of this veil, representing the ability to sit kind of at that 0 point and access neutrality in order to gain downloads, gain access to deeper knowledge, and really get in touch with our inner knowing and intuition. I also look at the High Priestess as kind of the balance of ego self versus higher self, if you want to look at that as kind of like light, shadow, ego self, higher self, and the ability to acknowledge and integrate both. And because of this, when we're in High Priestess energy, we can access and travel between realms much more easily. In June, and in the energy of the Lovers last month, the Magician, we talked about disclosure of information, and kind of that came through both on a global scale and individually in ways for a lot of us over the last month. And the High Priestess really helps us to kind of take that to the next level, to balance this newfound clarity and not get steered too far into the darkness or go too far into denial and trying to hide from the dark in the light. And the High Priestess really helps us to find and hold our own truths and inner knowings without judging others and being able to accept that others may hold truths that are very different than our own. The High Priestess often reminds me of that Walt Whitman quote, "Be curious rather than judgmental." And the more that we kind of are able to examine things as they come up with curiosity, the more we're able to integrate the light and the darkness like the High Priestess. That quote also recently came up again. I've always loved that. I think the first time I came across it was in high school, and I was like, yes to this. And it recently came up in the show Ted Lasso. If you are not watching it, I really do highly recommend it. It's so funny because many people will recommend shows and movies to me, but I rarely watch sitcoms. I don't have cable, not really a fan of mainstream media. And I'm mostly spend my free time watching like quantum and metaphysical documentaries or reading at night. But my one friend, she was pitching me hard to watch Ted Lasso. And she's like, I know you don't do like sitcoms, but listen. She's like, this is what it's about. She was like, it's about one person's vibration lifting the frequency of an entire community. Needless to say, I was interested and now I'm hooked. I highly recommend it. There's a lot of Chariot and High Priestess vibes in the show Ted Lasso.
Do you ever wonder what goes on behind the scenes of your favorite homegrown films and TV shows? Well, it's time to pop some popcorn, go behind the camera, and meet the people who are making it happen. I'm Mariska Fernandez, host of the Maple Popcorn Podcast. In this new series, you will discover exclusive interviews with Canadian icons and hear them talk about Canadian flicks and even break the fifth wall to share set anecdotes. This podcast is produced by The Brand is Female and powered by Telefilm Canada. Subscribe now on the podcast app of your choice and don't miss an episode. Stay in the know by visiting telefilm.ca/see-it-all.
The High Priestess also promises that July will offer a time of heightened intuition and psychic abilities. And this isn't always easy. It always sounds, I talk about this a lot. And if those of you who listened to the episode with Zenobia last month, if you didn't, I highly recommend it. She's one of, the most talented psychics I've ever connected with. And we were talking about the intuitive abilities and how there's light and shadow that comes with that. And it's not always easy because, in the ego versus higher self discussions, as many of you have probably experienced, intuition comes from a very different place than ego and logic. And when we first start working with it and accessing it, it can feel a lot hazier because it's like DNA that has been unused at best or, intentionally suppressed in ways at worst. So the High Priestess really is that inner knowing place. It's that place we go to that I just know this. I know it feels right. And, I know that this is happening and you can't always explain why, and it doesn't always come through. Like, a lot of people who are, and I think many people listening to this podcast are not in this camp, but a lot of people that are like, I don't believe it until I see it. I can't trust it until there's, physical, tangible proof. The High Priestess is that the proof is in the channeling, is in the resonance, is in the energy. And this month, the access to that is increasing. And the challenge will be for all of us as we expand even more into this, trusting it without having to defend, justify, explain the inner knowing, even to ourselves, but rather just learning more what it feels like for each of us. And the more that we do that, the deeper and deeper we can go and work with that intuition for our own healing and for the healing of the collective. And when we work with it and trust that versus kind of fighting or downplaying it, the clearer, so much more opens for us. And again, it empowers us and all of those that we touch. So that's something that's really beautiful, but doesn't come without challenge in the High Priestess for July. Our third card for July comes from the January 2021 overview, 7 of Wands, ruled by Mars and Leo. I always explain this as a card of all the sevens are kind of, if I had to use one word, I would say victory. Also strategy. I'm never good. When I say one word, I always come out with at least two. Strategy and victory for the Chariot and the sevens. And this is kind of the card of strategic perseverance. In the OG Smith Rider Waite deck, this card shows this dude dude who's kind of got one wand and he's pushing back against 6 others coming at him, which seems kind of like a huge disadvantage, right? And as the 7 cards are all ruled by the Chariot, we know that they all utilize yes, they're going to be victorious, but there's an element of perseverance, of willpower, of, channeling kind of where that energy is going to be used for the highest good. And often, a lot of my messages for the podcast, they come through channeled messages, sometimes in dreams, sometimes through readings with clients or conversations and things that happen in my day-to-day life. And it's funny because I was literally just saying, I don't really have a lot of these messages. I can go through astrology, numerology, et cetera, of the cards, but I don't really have a lot of these messages for this week. And just as I was kind of in the 11th hour to record the podcast, one of my best friends called about a problem she's having in her corporate job. And I was like, 7 of Wands right there. And she knows she's outgrown it. I think a lot of us have had these changes, especially in the pandemic. I mean, I kind of had that awakening and that dark night of the soul into this beautiful shift in my life in 2017. But I see this happening for a lot of clients and friends in the past year and a half of kind of knowing that something no longer resonates, something doesn't fit anymore, and it's becoming louder and undeniable. And whether that is a marriage, a romantic relationship, a career path, a city, a location you're living in. And for her, she knows she's outgrown this corporate job. It's definitely become clear it's not her soul's purpose, nor is the industry she was in. But she's also, being strategic. When we talk about like strategic victory in the 7, she's being strategic and planning to leave 9 months from now because of, certain deadlines and certain financial reasons that's the most advantageous thing for her. 7 of Wands is kind of like that big battle after the realizations and the integration that come through in the Lovers. So, we had the Lovers and Gemini in June, and that riding high on that knowledge that we talked about, the disclosure of information and the discernment of what we're going to do with it. And then prior to the 7 of Wands in the minor arcana, we have the 6 of Wands, which is kind of that like riding high, feeling like seen of, okay, I know where I'm headed now. And the 7 is like, what's worth holding strong for as we're going to persevere through into the next level for our highest good. 7 of Wands strategy is unique to everyone because our individual journeys are all unique. And obviously, the ideal scenario, when we see that something is no longer working for us, the ideal scenario would be, okay, exit, move forward, out of this, onto the next, into the new career, into the new location, or leaving a negative relationship to open space for a relationship that is aligned, right? But that isn't always the most feasible strategy for everyone. And if it doesn't feel safe and secure to do, that's not always the best thing to just leap and the net will appear. And that doesn't apply to every situation, to every individual. I look at 7 of Wands as kind of the how to survive the matrix cheat sheet. And if you picture this like a yes-no flow chart, those like tree flow charts of like, if yes, then here, if no, then here. I would start with, can you leave the current situation immediately and feel safe? If yes, get out. Awesome. Congratulations. If no, can you utilize the boundaries and strength found in 7 of Wands to detach where necessary and hold boundaries up until you can feel safe to exit? Anguish often comes from the lack of boundaries from one party, feeling like you are giving more, caring more, putting more out than the other. And we often think of this traditionally in romantic relationships. I always think of that scene from the movie The Holiday with Kate Winslet, where she's talking about in the opening scene that she's like in love with the guy at the office and he's not in love with her, and there's nothing more painful in the world than unrequited love. But isn't that true in any relationship, even including work? When you think about it, I know this is true of me. I bet for you, the most unhappy people regarding their work and career situations are often in a state of giving and caring way more than they believe they are cared about by their employers, their colleagues. So a sense of resentment starts to build where they keep trying harder and harder, giving more and more time and energy while only depleting themselves and, in the words of Dolly Parton, putting money in the man's wallet, right? So it's the cycle. And now I realize this might be a controversial comparison, but go with me for a second on this one. When I was talking to my friend about her situation, I referenced Seven of Wands and kind of the balance of fulfilling your agreements with integrity, because the Chariot and the Sevens, they do come with integrity. And it's, practicing like, yes, I'm going to fulfill this agreement, this contract for what I'm contracted to do, what I agreed to do, while also practicing healthy detachment and necessary boundaries in Seven of Wands. And I use the analogy of Julia Roberts' character in Pretty Woman. And, she had the boundaries of she didn't kiss her clients on the lips because she didn't want to develop feelings. And she showed up for these agreements with her clients, for that set amount of time and fulfilled her side of the contractual agreement. Until she caught the feels for Richard Gere, but that's neither here nor there. You know what I mean? You know where I'm going with this. So if this month you find yourself on the cusp of exiting or evolving out of a relationship or a situation that you've outgrown, it can be helpful to channel the energy of Seven of Wands, showing up for what you've energetically and contractually agreed to with integrity, but placing boundaries to allow you to begin to move forward and into the next chapter with the momentum of the Chariot and the intuition of the High Priestess. So you can still hold strong in your vision without depleting yourself in the process. So before we head out, let's take a look at our card of the week. Six of Swords. All right. This goes nicely with our cards for the month in terms of kind of what we've outgrown, what we're transitioning into, especially as we're in a waning moon cycle right now. And waning moons are a really good time for releasing things that no longer serve, patterns, behaviors, old thought patterns, ways that we, a lot of devil energies. And we talked about the devil of the full moon in Capricorn, releasing a lot of those devil energies. The Six of Swords is a card of journeying and deciding what we want to take with us on the other side of that journey and what we're now willing to release and leave behind as a result of kind of the lessons we've come through on this journey up until this point. And the Mercury in Aquarius ruling of Six of Swords suggests that we're able to look at matters we were once too close to now. It's like things that maybe we couldn't look at even considering exiting or without bringing up a lot of root chakra fears and insecurities. It's like, okay, now we're able, because of that Mercury communication and kind of that reflective nature in Aquarius, look at these things with more of an open mind and a reflective nature. This week, especially following the full moon last Thursday in Capricorn, is likely to bring clarity in on what we're now ready to move away from and what we're ready to leave behind. And even if this doesn't indicate an immediate exit for some of us, the Swords energy often brings in the intellect and knowledge of how we plan to move forward with this. So at least it kind of feels like there will be some sort of like a game plan in place. So before we head out, I just wanted to mention some upcoming July collaborations and events. I'm offering custom tarot experiences that are incredible through Gift Me Chic. You can check them out at giftmechic.com, also on Instagram. And my in-depth monthly energy updates are continuing. The June energy update, if you wanted to kind of go back and see, if you didn't see it, how that resonated. I'm someone who sometimes will read horoscopes retroactively to be like, oh yeah, I see how that played out. So if that's something that you're into, the June energy update is still up on the Academy of Divine Knowledge, and the July in-depth energy for the upcoming month is going to be up on Academy of Divine Knowledge July 1st as well. I hope this was helpful. I hope that you are having an incredible Cancer season so far. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, stay magical AF. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. Don't forget to hit subscribe and give the show a rating and review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Follow me at CardZB on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you and get your feedback on the show. I'll be back in a week with a new episode. Thank you for listening to Hex in the City.